The laughter still echoed in my ears long after I stepped off the stage. My cheeks burned, not from stage lights, but shame. That night was supposed to be our moment. My fiancé, Darren, had told me he was going to surprise me during his keynote at the company gala. I thought he meant a proposal, something heartfelt. Instead, he stood before 500 colleagues and said into the mic, "Some people think they're getting a ring tonight, but I'm just here to return my freedom." The crowd gasped, then laughed. He smirked at me, waiting for me to laugh too, but I couldn't. I stood in the audience like a statue, watching my dignity unravel under chandeliers and champagne flutes. No one helped. No one spoke. They just watched, amused, while my heart cracked under my heels. Later, when I locked myself, in the venue bathroom, mascara dripping into the sink, I whispered to the mirror, if I could go back, I wouldn't cry. I'd burn it all down. That night, I collapsed in bed, shaking. I didn't know it was the end of everything, or maybe the beginning, because when I opened my eyes the next morning, it was a month before the gala. I blinked twice, thinking it was a dream. But the calendar was the same one I replaced weeks ago. My phone pinged with an unread message from Darren, asking if I'd like to help him draft his speech for the gala. My chest constricted. I remembered this moment. I had been so eager to support him, thinking we were a team. But now I knew what was waiting. I moved through the house with a strange calm, like walking through the scene of a crime before it happened. His shirt was tossed over a chair, just like before. My coffee, mug still warm. Nothing had changed, except me. That humiliation hadn't been a misunderstanding. It was premeditated. And now I had 30 days before he used my name as a punchline. But this time I wouldn't cry in the bathroom. This time I wouldn't beg or blush or wait for his scraps. I had one advantage now. I knew the ending, and I was going to rewrite it, with a smile he'd never see coming. I texted him back, just like before. Of course, I'd love to help. That was the first lie I told. I made him think nothing had changed. I leaned into the role of supportive fiancé, laughed at his half-formed jokes, nodded when he tested punchlines on me. I even pretended to agree when he said, "People love when I'm a little brutal. It keeps them listening." I smiled and kissed his cheek. Inside, I was memorizing every syllable, every ego-fueled line. Because this time, I was recording. This time, I was the one watching. I spent the next few days reactivating contacts I had let go while dating him. Women I used to admire, clients I'd sacrificed to help build his career. I'm planning something new, I told them. I didn't say revenge. I said strategy. I said independence. Because I wasn't coming for his job. I was coming for his narrative. The one where I was clingy, boring, replaceable. No. I was going to become unforgettable, and I'd let him hand me the mic. At night, I replayed his words from that gala. Not because I wanted to relive it, but because I needed to understand the exact kind of man I had once loved. The way he paused for effect. The calculated cruelty masked as charisma. "She thinks she's the boss at home, too," he had joked, once winking at the crowd. So I figured I'd let her boss me into being single again. Laughter. I'd smiled awkwardly then, trying to shrink into the seat. But now, I knew what to do with that kind of venom. You don't cry over it. You turn it into fuel. I began crafting my own speech, one he'd never hear in rehearsal. I made sure to schedule it right before his slot at the gala. Just something small, I told the committee. A short message about women in leadership. They agreed. Darren smiled, smug. He had no idea I wasn't just going to open the night, I was going to end his. Meanwhile, I embedded myself in every corner of the event's planning. I suggested vendor swaps, reached out to sponsors, and charmed my way into helping redesign the guest experience. "You're amazing at this," the coordinator said. "I wish we'd asked you sooner." I nodded politely, but inside I was already seeing the chessboard form. Darren had always thought I was a pawn, but pawns only look small until they reach the other side and become queens. I made sure the run of show listed my speech first, and I made sure it had one other critical detail: the media coverage. This year, the gala would be streamed live. Darren had insisted on it, thinking it would boost his online brand. I smiled when I confirmed it. He wanted an audience. I'd make sure he had one. Not for the version of me he mocked, but for the one who had outgrown him completely. A week before the gala, Darren started prepping his surprise. I played dumb. He asked if I wanted to rehearse my lines with him. "It's just 5 minutes," he said. "Warm, light, nothing. Heavy," I nodded. "I trust you." He kissed my hand and said, "That's what I love about you." I didn't flinch. He thought trust was weakness. I was letting him believe I hadn't changed. But while he was writing punchlines, I was rewriting our legacy. That same night, I sent an anonymous tip to 2 bloggers who specialized in professional exposés. "He's planning to humiliate her. Again." I didn't give my name. I didn't need to. They promised to watch. I planted a seed in silence. Let him water it, with arrogance. I began creating a second guest list, my own. Women he'd ignored, dismissed, talked over in meetings. People he used to label as too much, too emotional, too ambitious. I reached out one by one, told them I was giving a short speech about reclaiming your voice, and I'd love for them to be in the room. I didn't mention Darren's name. I didn't need to. Every single one replied with the same word: yes. These women had been waiting, some consciously, some not, for someone to say aloud what they'd all swallowed. I wasn't just crafting a performance. I was creating a reckoning, one soft enough to sting, one graceful enough to land on every desk, inbox, and headline the next morning. Meanwhile, Darren became more distracted. He was polishing lines, testing delivery, charming interns. Every time he laughed with someone new, I smiled, because arrogance is blind, and I needed him completely unaware when the lights turned. 2. Nights before the gala, he showed me the suit he was planning to wear. "It's bold, right?" he asked. "You'll look perfect next to me." I smiled and said, "I've been planning my look for weeks." He laughed. "You always overthink things. That's what makes you so endearing." He patted my head like I was an assistant instead of a partner. I excused myself and locked the bathroom door. Then I looked into the mirror, steadying my breath. My dress wasn't just going to match his. It was going to bury his narrative. I'd chosen crimson, sharp, commanding, unforgettable. The color of danger. The color of warnings ignored. I whispered to my reflection, "You are not a footnote tonight. You are the headline." And that night, I slept like a woman counting down to something glorious. The day of the gala arrived with sun and silence. I woke early, checked every note, printed one copy of my speech, and sent it to my assistant for safekeeping. I didn't wear perfume. I didn't want to mask the scent of arrival. Darren kissed my cheek as we left the house. "You ready for our big night?" I nodded. He checked his watch. "Mine's the closing act. That's when everyone will really be paying attention." I smiled. "You're right. That's when it all hits hardest." At the venue, I shook hands, laughed lightly, posed for photos. The room sparkled. Everyone had no idea it was a stage not just for celebration, but revelation. The director signaled to me from across the ballroom. "You're up first." I nodded. Darren gave me a playful nudge. "Don't go too hard on them. You'll make me look soft. I turned, smiled fully, and whispered, Not possible. The lights hit just right. My heels didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. This was my moment, and I wasn't there to survive it. I was there to command it. Good evening, I said, and thank you for giving me 5 minutes of your time. That's all I need. A few polite chuckles. I began slowly, speaking not of love, not of sacrifice, but of silence, the kind women carry when they've been made the butt of someone's ambition. They say behind every successful man is a woman. But sometimes, that woman isn't behind him. She's being dragged under his spotlight while he takes center stage. People froze. Faces shifted. Even Darren's grin, across the room, began to falter. I continued. I didn't name him. I didn't need to. Every detail I gave, the jokes, the manipulation, the mockery dressed up as humor, was a mirror. And he knew it. And yet, I said, pausing as my voice dropped, we survive. We rebuild. And one day we stand here. Not to be applauded for enduring, but to be remembered for leaving. The room held its breath. I glanced at the camera light, still streaming, still live. I ended with a toast. To every woman who was ever the punchline, may you become the story no one dares to laugh at again. Thunderous applause. Not out of pity, out of recognition. I stepped down as Darren rose, pale, hesitant. The mic squealed in his hands. He tried to start his jokes, but no one laughed. Not because they hated him, but because they finally saw him. He cleared his throat. Tough act to follow, he joked, gripping the mic like it might run from him. There was a hollow laugh or two from the back of the room, but nothing close to the easy chuckles he used to earn just by being smug and charming. His eyes scanned the crowd, looking for someone, anyone, to reassure him that he still owned the room. But no one smiled. No one nodded. He shifted his weight, trying to salvage the speech he'd once rehearsed so confidently in front of me. You know, he began. Sometimes in relationships, you have to keep things light. Another silence. Keep your partner grounded, even if that means making a few jokes now and then. Someone coughed. A woman in the second row folded her arms. My friends, my witnesses, sat motionless, watching him unravel in the very spotlight he once thought belonged to him. I didn't grin. I didn't smirk. I just watched, calmly, because that moment was never about humiliating him. It was about letting his truth finally speak without my silence to shield him. And without me? His words fell flat, because cruelty without charisma is just cruelty. The AV team shifted nervously. Darren stammered, losing his place on the cards, in his hand. He looked around, then back toward the screen behind him, the one he had insisted on for maximum impact. That's when the slide changed. Not the one he planned. Not the bullet points about his career or the flashy photo of us together. No. The screen flickered, and then it showed a muted clip, grainy, low-res audio of a rehearsal weeks earlier. It was him, laughing with his friends. She's so easy to control, he said, smirking. She thinks she's helping me with this speech. Can't wait to see her face when I flip the script. Maybe I'll fake propose, then pull the ring away. You know, for laughs. Gasps broke through the room like a wave. His face drained of color. He turned to the tech team. Turn it off. But they just stared back. Someone else had control now. Me. I'd given the footage anonymously. Weeks earlier, I didn't care about legal blowback, because the truth has its own kind of immunity. The media team had hesitated, but once they verified it, they agreed it deserved light. The audience was silent now. No whispers. No fidgeting. Just the sound of Darren's casual cruelty filling the space he once commanded. He stumbled through a final sentence. I guess the real joke's on me. Someone in the back scoffed. He lowered the mic. No applause, only awkward shifting chairs and blinking camera lights. He tried to step down gracefully, but grace doesn't follow you after you've stripped it from someone else. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I had let him build his own noose out of words. I had simply let it tighten. After the gala, headlines exploded. Corporate star caught mocking fiancé on tape. Gala speech backfires in real time. He posted an apology the next morning, tight-lipped, clearly written by someone in PR. Comments flooded in, mostly from women. You looked so uncomfortable. She handled it like a queen. You don't deserve her. I didn't respond to any of it. I just uploaded my speech in full, captioned, "For anyone who's ever been made to feel small in public, this is your mirror and your moment." It hit 1 million views in 2 days. Companies reached out. Podcasts invited me on. But I wasn't chasing clout. I was reclaiming context. The story wasn't scorned fiancé exposes ex. It was woman reclaims stage after being erased. And that was the difference. I wasn't burning him to the ground. I was building from the ashes he left me in. Darren tried calling. Once. Twice. I didn't block him. I just didn't care anymore. My silence wasn't anger. It was graduation. When he sent a final text, "We should talk," I replied with a single sentence. "You already said enough. The world heard you." And I meant it. He wanted clarity, forgiveness, closure. But what he had really lost wasn't my forgiveness. It was my presence. I had stayed silent for so long that he mistook it for permission. Now, he had to speak, into the void he created. Alone. I didn't want an apology. I didn't want anything. Because the woman he humiliated on stage had ceased to exist. And the woman who replaced her? She had learned that sometimes the most powerful revenge is indifference paired with undeniable growth. He didn't just lose me. He began losing everything. Sponsors pulled out of his upcoming campaigns. A mentorship program he'd been spearheading quietly replaced him. "We're moving in another direction," they said. Translation: no one wanted to align their name with a man exposed for ridiculing the woman who once propped up his entire brand. His podcast lost over half its subscribers within a week. People weren't just shocked. They were done. Because what happened on stage wasn't just a mistake. It was a mirror. And when people looked into it, they saw versions of themselves they didn't want to be. His charm turned stale overnight. And the more he tried to explain, the worse it sounded. "It was just a joke," he kept saying. But cruelty disguised as wit isn't funny. It's transparent, especially when the laughter has already died. Meanwhile, I didn't rush to capitalize. I moved slowly, intentionally. I started a digital space for women navigating public humiliation, toxic partnerships, and quiet recoveries. I called it Stage Left. A place where we didn't fight to be seen. We chose when and how to step into our light. The platform grew fast. Not because of me, but because they were waiting. For someone to go first. For someone to show that you could be broken in front of a room full of strangers. And still rebuild a life so bright it made your past look like a shadow. I wasn't some perfect symbol. I was simply proof. And that proof became power. Podcasts, panels, private coaching. I wasn't chasing fame. I was following purpose. Every woman who reached out said the same thing. "I saw myself in you. I thought I was crazy. I thought I was overreacting." I told them, No one's ever overreacting to being humiliated by someone they trusted. There's a special kind of pain in being turned into a spectacle by someone who once looked at you like you were everything. It's betrayal layered in performance. And when they do it with a smile, it stings even more. I didn't teach women how to clap back. I taught them how to outgrow, how to stop shrinking, how to reclaim silence, not as submission, but as strategy. I wasn't popular because I was loud. I was powerful because I was clear, and clarity will always outlast noise. Darren released a redemption video 2 months later. He sat in front of a bookshelf, looking remorseful, pausing between sentences like he was searching for sincerity. "I've learned a lot about myself," he said, "and I'm committed to doing better." Comments roasted him. Funny how men only learn after consequences. Healing from what? Accountability? One comment stuck out. "She didn't ruin you. She just stopped protecting you." And that was the truth. I didn't leak that footage to destroy him. I gave the world what it needed to decide for itself. I gave him truth, and he crumbled under it. That wasn't my fault. That was the weight of his own words finally being heard without my silence to buffer them. He showed up at one of my speaking events, sat in the back row, head down. I saw him when I stepped on stage, but I didn't flinch. I told the story again, from the beginning. But this time, I didn't tell it from a place of pain. I told it like a roadmap, like a victory earned, not granted. I looked out at the audience and said, "Sometimes, the stage that breaks you becomes the ground you rebuild your throne on." The room rose to its feet. He stayed seated. Afterward, he tried to approach me, but my assistant stepped. "Yeah, she doesn't take feedback from people she had to recover from." I didn't even look his way. Not out of cruelty, but because I was already walking into the next room, the next purpose, the next version of myself. A journalist once asked me, "What was your goal that night? Did you want to humiliate him the way he humiliated you?" I smiled and answered, "No. My goal was never humiliation. It was revelation. He just didn't survive the truth." That's the part people don't understand. I didn't weaponize anything. I just stopped hiding the evidence. He'd always been this man. I had just spent too long softening his sharp edges so the world wouldn't cut itself on him. But when I stepped back, the sharpness sliced through everything. His image, his charm, his credibility. I wasn't bitter. I was free. That night didn't break me. It clarified me. And once you see someone clearly, no amount of apologies or rebranding can blur your vision again. I wasn't angry when I watched him fade. I was grateful. Because sometimes, it takes a collapse to show you what was never built right in the first place. I started hearing from women he dated after me, quiet messages. "He's not what he seems. I wish I had seen your speech sooner." I never replied to shame them. I replied with grace. "I understand. We all ignore the signs until we can't anymore." They weren't reaching out for validation. They were looking for language, for someone to name what they couldn't yet say aloud. That's what Stage Left had become. A space not just for healing, but for translation. The pain, the confusion, the misplaced guilt. We gave it shape. We gave it voice. And that voice wasn't always angry. Sometimes it was calm, collected, devastating in its gentleness. That was the power Darren never understood. When a woman tells the truth without rage, it lands like a thunderclap, and he couldn't shout over it. He couldn't meme it away. He couldn't laugh louder than facts, because no matter how polished a punchline is, it dies the moment the audience stops clapping. My mother once said, "The best revenge is living well." I used to roll my eyes at that. It sounded like a cliché wrapped in a fortune cookie. But now, I see it. Not because I wanted to punish him, but because living well means building a life where he no longer gets a mention. Where he's not part of the story, not even as a villain. Just omitted. Like a paragraph that didn't belong in the first place. I stopped talking about him in interviews. I started focusing on what came after. Because that's the story. Worth telling. How a woman went from being humiliated in front of 500 strangers to founding a platform that served 500,000. That story didn't need him. It needed her. The version of me who didn't flinch anymore. The one who spoke slowly, moved intentionally, loved herself without condition. There was a moment, months later, when I was asked to give a closing speech at an international women's summit. The room was full of founders, leaders, survivors, revolutionaries. I took a deep breath and opened with this. Once upon a time, I was the woman who laughed at jokes made at my expense, just to keep the peace. Now I speak so other women know, peace isn't something you keep, it's something you claim. The room exhaled. That line wasn't rehearsed. It came from the deepest part of me, the part that still remembered the sharp sting of betrayal and the even sharper silence that followed. But I no longer carried that sting like a scar. It had become a compass, a direction, a North Star made from my own broken pieces, reshaped into purpose. After that summit, I walked through the crowd shaking hands, hugging strangers who'd become sisters in survival. One woman stopped me and said, "I don't know what he did to you, but thank God he did it, because this version of you, she's a force." I smiled, not because I needed the compliment, but because she was right. Pain doesn't always break you. Sometimes it sculpts you, refines you, and when it's public pain, when the wound is opened under lights and laughter, what you do next becomes not just a choice, but a blueprint. I had chosen to build, to rise, to become undeniable, and now, no matter who watched me fall, they were all still watching. But this time, with respect. I saw him one final time, not at a gala, not at a public event, just a quiet cafe where I was meeting a publisher. He walked in alone. No fanfare, no confidence left in his step. He spotted me, and for a second, I saw hope flicker in his eyes. Like maybe this was his chance for redemption, for reconnection, for anything. I simply nodded politely and returned to my coffee. He approached, but I didn't stand. I didn't freeze. I simply existed, unmoved. "You look good," he said. I thanked him. "I've seen the work you've done," he added. "It's powerful." I waited. "I didn't mean to hurt you the way I did." I tilted my head. "You didn't hurt me. You revealed yourself, and I'm grateful. That version of me needed to die so this one could be born." He blinked, unsure what to say. I smiled, not to comfort him, but to end it kindly. Then I turned away, not because I was finished with him, but because I had been done long before he ever knew I started walking away. I walked outside into sunlight that touched my skin like a crown. I had appointments, meetings, projects, a calendar full of purpose, not pain. People weren't inviting me to speak because I was once humiliated. They invited me because I had turned that humiliation into strategy. Because I hadn't just survived a fall, I'd designed my rise. No one asked about Darren anymore. No one needed to. His name had faded from the narrative like a dropped actor from a show rewritten in real time. The woman I had been, the one who once cried herself to sleep, questioned her worth, replayed that night over and over, was no longer inside me. She'd done her job. She'd carried me until I could stand on my own stage. And now? She could rest. I had taken the mic. For good. One final message came through weeks later. From his mother. "You handled that with more grace than he ever deserved. I raised a man. You became a woman. I didn't reply. Not out of disrespect, but because her words weren't mine to carry. I'd already laid every burden down. Lit a candle that night. Not to mourn, but to honor my own resurrection. Not many people get the chance to rewrite the ending of their worst memory. I did, and I didn't rewrite it with revenge. I rewrote it with reflection. I didn't break him. I simply stopped editing him. I let his truth speak louder than his charm. And when people finally heard it, they decided who he really was. Was invited to headline a women's leadership conference under the theme, Turn Your Pain into Power. I opened with a single sentence. The moment you stop protecting the person who hurt you is the moment you begin protecting yourself. That line lived in the crowd like gospel. Hands clutched hearts. Women nodded, some cried. Because the truth is, we've all played bodyguard for someone who broke us. All excused behavior just to keep peace. And I was done being a peacekeeper in someone else's war. I was a builder now, a mirror. A name spoken not with sympathy, but with weight. Close my speech with the story, not his name. Just the moment. The red dress. The silence. The choice. That night didn't destroy me, I said. It exposed me to myself. I ended with a toast, water raised high under warm lights. To every woman who has ever laughed at while breaking, may the world one day watch you rise and never laugh again. The room stood for me. Not because I survived a man, but because I became one of those rare stories where the woman doesn't just recover. She dominates. And she does it without ever raising her voice. I left the stage without looking back. I didn't need to, because everything that had tried to follow me, shame, heartbreak, the echo of laughter, had lost its power. I had taken it all and built something they couldn't erase. They used to say I was the quiet one, that I played it safe, that I'd never make waves. But they were wrong. I wasn't the storm. I was the rebuild after it. And my name? It wasn't linked to pain anymore. It was linked to proof. Proof that the woman humiliated in front of a crowd could rise so high the crowd would stand for her next time. So if he ever tells the story his way, that I was too sensitive, that it was just a joke, that I got lucky, let him. Because the truth? He chose to embarrass me in Weiss, front of the world. Reborn. I let the world watch him crumble, and I did it without ever touching the mic again.